everybody! If you've never heard of me, I'm making a humble guide on League of Legends champions. And today we are talking about Janna, the last air-related champion in League of Legends I haven't talked about yet. Ever. So, let's have a look at this awesome pillar support. Before we start, I'd like to ask you to subscribe so you can get more guides on more champions. Now, into the action. Okay, for runes, I would always recommend Sorcery with either Arcane Command or Array. Arcane Command is better in lines where you know that you will have safe poke and can plant your W very easily, so you can get that extra damage. And Array is in games where you want to provide it a little bit extra appeal and are playing more towards late game. I personally am always trying to scale with Janna, so I just go for Array. Then the rest of the tree is kind of easy. You can try to use Nimbus Cloak, but you don't usually need that extra movement speed today, so I just go for Mana Flow, since you can get it up really fast, and that extra mana is very needed on Jaina with her high mana costs. Next, Celerity is almost a certain pick. Transcendence is not that valuable since you will get enough ability haste from other sources, and Celerity just has movement speed well, which grants you strong points into possibly three of your abilities. Only other option is, again, if you have really extremely easy poke in line, I would go for Absolute Focus since you will get that extra damage early. And lastly, again, not really need Gathering Storm because Jaina scales really well into late game, so you don't need this one. Water Walking is a bit more interesting because it allows you to get more roams and be more powerful in jungle fights. But the best option, in my opinion, is Scorch, which makes that early game, which you have kinda lacking, a lot stronger. And out of the three options for stronger laning phase, this one is best because you just deal extra damage from 1W and you will have that damage guaranteed, and it's a strong damage. For secondary tree, you have a lot of options. Again, if you go against line, if you are in a line where enemy support has stronger poke than you, I would usually go for Resolve with Second Wind and Revitalize, which increases the health of your shield. Other options are Inspiration, which you usually take if you are in a lane where you are the stronger one. And here I would always take Biscuits and probably Cosmic Insight so you can throw the W more often. Just one thing, never go for Magical Footwear because you want your boots as fast as possible and this cripples you a lot. But by far, the best option is going to be Domination with Taste of Blood, again, poking, and either Relentless Hunter or Ultimate. Usually I recommend Relentless Hunter so you can move between lanes and base a lot faster. If you feel like you will need that poke really often, if you go against a heavy assassin team comp, you can go for Ultimate. But Relentless is the 90% pick. And for runes, you usually will go for 2 Adaptive Force and Armor depending on matchup, because obviously no attack speed, but 8 ability haste just isn't what 10 second CDR, 10 CDR was before. So 2 times offense it is. That is going to be everything for runes. I'll see you with the rest of the build in the video. And here we go. So, as always, I'll quickly talk about summoners. Flash is important even more than on other champions, since Jaina is extremely squishy and has no mobility apart from a bit faster movement speed. And since she relies heavily on positioning, flashes need to. The other spell I would usually recommend on many casters is going to be Exhaust. Not so much because of the slow, even though it is a great way to get epics in the laning phase, but mostly because you can deny all the damage a fed enemy liner can get. Because even though you can prevent them getting fed in your own lane, where you can just peel for your ally, you can't control a Fiora on enemy team who just goes 15-0 after 15 minutes. Well, that's kind of a big number, but you get the point. And with the damage decrease, uh, you can stop her, and possibly get that bonus gold from her for your allies. So I usually go exhaust on many caster support since Ignite is mostly an early game summoner spell and you are into the lane game. With that out of the way, we can get to the items. First off, Spell Thieves is an easy pick since you are going to be poking a lot and you will get the gold pretty fast. It's actually the fastest item to get your wards with. After you go for your first back, I would mostly recommend going for your boots as to finish as your first item, since you will be really utilizing the W a lot in for the poking, and also you get that bonus extra damage a little bit. Uh, you got three options for your boots. First off, it's the Ionian boots, which gives you the ability haste and the movement speed, but you will have a lot of ability haste from all the other items. So then there's the mobility boots, which you can get if you're going to be in a heavy roaming game, and you want to get that little extra burst damage of your first W when you arrive into the fight. But since you are squishy and want to get away from all the action, and all you need is to hit one enemy or get hit by one
Swiftly.
enemy, I usually go for Boots of Swiftness, which gives you the most movement speed overall in the fight. So it's better for the damage. It also gives you the what do we call it? It's kind of like toughness, except it's instead of it just gives you the ability
Breathlessly.
to deal with slows. So it's a really nice thing for boots, and I usually go for them 90% of the time. For your first item, I've seen people going for Moonstone, but I generally despise it on casters since you're not really gonna be auto attacking that much. And that leaves us with Imperial Mandate, which on the other hand I really like, and since you will be slowing and immobilizing a lot, by the way, your ultimates count for this too. You will get that magic damage, you will get that movement speed, and also it grants that little bit of AP on every legendary item you get. So Imperial Mandate is, in my opinion, the best mythic item for Janna. After you got that, I always go for Ardent Sensor. There's not a game where you wouldn't want to use this on Janna. With again, it increases the attack speed of your ally, which greatly improves your E, but it also gives the attack speed to you, so you can actually be useful in team fights other than saving everyone around you. Next, as should be obvious, is going to be Staff of the Flowing Water, which is terrible name in my opinion, but item itself is good. This is the same thing as Ardent Sensor, except instead of attack speed, it gives you movement speed, meaning that you will be granting your allies extreme amount of survivability, since they will usually have the shield, you will be able to peel for them, and they are able to move fast. And with that leaves us to our last item, which is extremely flexible. First off, there's the Chemtech Putrifier, which until like a week ago I had no idea existed, since I don't play a lot of casters. But it's a really cool item, which lets you deal with heavy team comp that's focused on healing, for example, like Soraka, Kayn, and other things like this. Meaning that you don't force your ADC to buy items that reduce healing themselves and can focus more on the damage, since you already got the important items. Meaning that Chemtech Putrifier basically saves the gold for your teammates. Then we get to one of my favorite items, which is Redemption, where you want to get Redemption when you know that at the start of the fight, they are able to survive the burst enemy may have. So, because it takes 2.5 seconds to cast it, meaning that if they survive the start, you can easily use Redemption and basically win the fight, because you're dealing true damage to the enemies, healing your allies, and together you're basically working with your ultimate and E, so they should be unkillable in that one fight, unless your team is really behind. And last, not so popular option is going to be EDD, if I will be able to find it, which I usually am not. Yes, here it is, which is Zeke's Convergence. Because first off, immobilizing, you have options to immobilize, but you mostly want to use this when the enemy team is in that bruiser state, like meaning that you don't get 1-0'd, which with the armor helps you a bit. You get a bit tankier, and also your allies will apply a lot of attack damage, uh, uh, damage, just damage, for 8 seconds after we mobilize someone. So if you go with some hyper carry like Kaisa Jinx, you will just shred your enemies extremely fast thanks to Zeke's. Only other option I find possible is instead the String Wordstone, but you probably don't need all that many control ones in the late game. Of course, it's great to have them, and unlike other champions, you can get that extra movement speed bonus from it. But I think that just getting any of these three is better. And now we can finally go and have a look at Janna's abilities, which are actually very simple, but also very effective. So, let's start with your passive. You gain a bonus movement speed, and allies that are moving towards you and are in this area are moving faster. And also, the your auto attacks and your W deal bonus damage scaling with your movement speed. What this does is that first off you move really fast, and when allies are in trouble and are running towards you with your shielding, they are faster, meaning that you always want to stay in the backline at any time, because you can easily allow for quick escapes because you will keep them alive for the duration of some random CC and then they can fall back. Then we get to Janna's, well, extremely interesting ability, which, well, I'll explain ability order later. Which is your Q, Howling Gale. It is a skill shot knockup, which when you cast it for the first time, it creates the tornado on the spot. After 3 seconds, the tornado will flow in that target direction you chose before and damage the first enemy and every enemy that it hit and knocks them up. When you reactivate it, the tornado will be cast instantly, meaning that after W's of your Q, the tornado goes out. The longer the tornado is being casted, the faster it goes. So right now, I'll try to show it like this. The tornado moves really slow just area right here, but if you let it go for those 3 seconds, it will reach its maximum area at the same time. Also, the knockup and the damage is increased for every second the tornado is on cast. It is a great ability and you want to upgrade it second and max last. Because even though it is a nice CC and interrupt, it does not have such great stats as your other abilities, meaning that once you cast it, the knockup is always the same, and you just don't need, it does not deal enough damage to upgrade it. Then we get to your main poking ability, which is your Zephyr. Passively, you gain additional bonus movement speed and can move through enemy units. It's called. I'm sorry. It's yeah. Yes, you are ghosted. You are ghosted. Meaning that you can easily poke enemies in line, since you can move freely through minions. And now we get to the active part. Basically, it's a short range button click ability, damaging the enemy hit and slowing them for 2 seconds. As you can see, the slow is increased, which is much better than the knockup, which is always the same. But also, they are slowed for 2 seconds, meaning that when you damage them, you can quickly fall back because they can't follow you. Unless you're playing against something like Nautilus, and then you should play a really careful game. So that is what you're going to be during the laning phase most of the time. Just waiting, and once you're sure you can strike, just hit them and run away. Only thing to keep in mind is that once you cast it, you lose that bonus movement speed and are no longer ghosted. So don't go into 5 enemies just with your Zephyr, which no normal player would do, but I just want to keep it up there. Don't do that. And then is your main support ability, Idle Storm. You will grant a really great shield. It starts great even at the start of the game. It's something about I guess it's 110 with your basic item, and you can shield ally or your tower, granting them bonus attack damage, which again is why Janna is so good support. First off, you shield your ally for a lot of damage with a shield that is quickly wearing off, but that extra attack damage is applied to all the abilities, not just auto attacks. Meaning that if you go with something like Draven, he will get that bonus AD to his Axis, and all those other champions who have great scalings will be working with your E. And another thing to talk about, is that when you cast your E and hit enemy with CC or slow, the cooldown is reduced by 20%. Meaning that you usually want to start with this ability in team fights to get some bonus damage on enemies, permanent damage on your allies, and then try to hit them with as many abilities you got so you can cast this again. And now we're getting to your ultimate, which it's an AoE heal. It starts at about, I believe it's about 400 heal once you get to the level 6, and you usually get your first items and things like this. And what it does, it basically knocks away all enemies in this circle around you, and well, let's just show it. And for a duration of 3 seconds, you are healing allies in the area. Once you start moving or gets interrupted, the channeling stops and they are no longer healed. But you will always get that knock away for the enemy. So sometimes you don't even want to use this for the full heal, even though if you can, you do that. But you just want it as a build for some extremely dangerous threat which is coming. Let's just say level 18 Jax, which jumps on you. Now he's not a trouble because he's outside of the circle. You heal your allies, they can kill him. And that is it. Janna is really basic champion with a lot of potential. Now for something a bit more interesting, laning partners, as I was saying, it's champions that have really great scalings with AD because you want to use your shield. So first one I want to throw out there is Lucian, who has that bursty playstyle, meaning that when you shield him, and the shield is wearing off actually really quickly when you look at this, Lucian can get shielded, jump in, get out his empowered attacks, Qs, everything, and he can fall back. And the enemy is extremely low. You can possibly follow, get your slow, and finish them off. But the thing is that I really like this with Lucian in laning phase, where I just buff him, he goes in, gets a lot tons of damage, and we can continue farming. Then we do it for the second time, and the enemy is no longer. The other extremely strong, as I was saying, is the Raven, who usually benefits from hard CC champions because he's extremely dominant early game. But Janna can actually utilize her E to just create no troubles for him to 1-0ing both enemies in a few seconds. All together with the slow, which makes it extremely easy for him to follow on them, since he has his own boost of the movement speed. And probably the best ally is gonna be Ashe, since first of her Q is a flat AD increase, which works extremely great with your E. And she has her own slow, so once you slow the enemy, she can easily follow up and finish them off. Plus, you got your shield and knock up, meaning that you got follow up for her ultimate. You can cover her while she's attacking the enemy, and it's a really favorable matchup. And that's, in my opinion, the golden trio. Of course, any hyper carry, as I was saying before, Kai'Sa, Jinx, possibly Kog'Maw, are extremely good traits for you. And better to say, allies who can themselves increase their own attack speed are good for you, since you just give them the damage. Unlike other support champions which can increase that too. And that is going to be everything. You always want to stay behind in the team fights and be careful when to use your ultimate, but don't be afraid to use it even if there's just one ally dying or one enemy to push back. Because it's better to heal your enemy allies for 1000 where they only heal 500 health than to die and don't do anything. Only other little tip I would want to talk about is when you use your Q in a bush, it obviously can't be seen unless the bush is worth it. Meaning that you can possibly try to use this offensively before you go in to knock up enemy ADC and you can follow up, but you can also use it as a sort of a false threat where since the cast is instantaneous, they don't know if when you enter a bush you have casted your Q. So you can create that feeling of insecurity for them. And yes, that's probably the only real tip I can give you for Janna. Except, well, most of it comes to the Q since other abilities are point and click and depends on the situation. But also aim the Q where your target will be instead of where they are, which seems obvious. But you know, when you got enemy standing right here, you usually will be on a side as a support. Aim that tornado behind them because when they try to run, they can't. You got your beautiful possible, believe it's 2 seconds knockup. Yes. Yes, I am pretty sure it's 2 seconds. 2 seconds knockup to cover the area. So enemy prepared it back there. They usually will even move there, even when they are not escaping, because enemies usually expect that you are targeting them and not some random part of ground behind. And that is everything. Be really careful to not get caught out by other extremely all in a all in a enemy supports, which usually you are a queen of the peel, meaning that you can easily get them away with your Q, da da da. But in the early stages, you just want to be really careful. For example, I don't like to bring him up a lot because he's not played a lot as support, but Swain, who with his early game, just on level 1, he can easily, but extremely easily, just pull you and get you on the half of your health himself. Altogether, if his ADC is ready, you will have your laning phase almost unplayable. So keep out for that and possibly look for uh, supports which are the poking matchups, just like Swain, who I wouldn't necessarily call pokey, but long range damage. If you see Exert support, I would probably not pick Janna unless you already have a prepaid. It's possible to win against them, but it's extremely hard for you to do something that can save your allies since you will be so low. And now finally we can end. I hope that I teach you something new, and I'll see you in the next video. Battery out!